Humorous distractions. Scarcely the sight one wishes to see when they are tasked to trundle to their vicinity's most dependable convenience vendor and withdraw a modest stash of free cash from its formerly dispensing hole in the wall. A discreet out-of-order sign might dissuade any compulsive practical jokers who may find it amusing to stick their head through this temporary orifice and yell out comments like, "Will my bank charge me for this transaction? Could you change a 20 for 2 tenors? Where do I insert my card? There's no option to print a receipt." Or, "You wouldn't have any overdraft if this window were kept closed." The will to waddle. "Pay no attention to that monster in the mirror," muttered one marauding magpie to his own misshapen reflection, cast upon the tinted glass of a Velux skylight, installed in the converted loft belonging to one of many tastefully modernised abodes stationed along the riverside of Shoreham's overcast peninsula. A curious utterance from the bird world's proverbial fiddler on the roof, and one that had stemmed directly from a territorial altercation between this particular piebald rogue and 2 other members of nature's ornithological hierarchy. This intense physical exchange had commenced with an air of innocuous menace, when the free-roaming winged harlequin had swooped down to perch on the pitched roof of a neighbouring property for an urgent mid-flight preen, without realising that its emergency landing spot was already occupied by a baby herring gull, who'd been zealously guarding its chimney stack in the absence of 2 foraging parents. The offended juvenile immediately hunched its shoulders, tucking its neck and craw tightly into its chest, with its beak jutting forwards at an aggressive angle, an unmistakable combat stance that makes these prolific seabirds look like giant feathered lozenges on legs, then began pacing stiffly towards its still oblivious rival. Within only yards of what would have been a viciously peckish encounter, the magpie suddenly glimpsed its larger adversary and was spooked enough to vacate without crossing bills. The grudging intruder, its pride mortally wounded, flapped furiously up to ramming speed, then, in seeming spite, dive-bombed an unsuspecting wood-pigeon, which was perched in front of the aforementioned skylight, discreetly rehearsing its mating ritual. As if to round off this primeval chain reaction, our now airborne woolly warbler gracefully circled back to settle upon the very space that its attacker had been forced to abandon, to the herring gull's supreme indifference. The right to roll. Made the ill-advised decision to don a single cotton layer for only the 3rd occasion during this seasonably frigid British spring, making me a slimmer target than St. Beaufort's flappy weather vanes for today's potent offshore breeze, but left my exposed arms and unarmoured chest vulnerable for its abrasive chill to chew holes through. On the upstroke, no further hellacious cloudbursts hindered my twisty progress throughout this tangibly toilsome tour around the humpy crescents and close-knit cul-de-sacs of Shoreham's quirky suburbs, though regional forecasts from flocks of migrating house sparrows suggested that a few surprise squalls may have been simmering deep within their cumulus cauldrons. If true, at least this'll mean no localised hosepipe bands are lurking on the unsettled horizon. On a whim and a wheel. Another spontaneous return to ancient stomping ground, with a refreshed mental attitude, but very few radical ideas, and only partially revitalised energy reserves. Hence my efforts panned out very much as unplanned, and provided the machine-moulded statisticians mobilised by Strava's militant athletic intelligentsia no scope to perform their strictly pre-prompted analysis. However, from a mortally attuned perspective, the delicate dusting of drizzle I received within half a heavy-hearted opening kilometre didn't quite dampen my spirits enough to suspend pedal play. Once I'd traversed Ferry Footbridge and veered east in the wake of an overloaded coastliner, ferrying early casualties of Shoreham's Friday night booze-ups back to Bedfordshire, this errant shower had subsided, though a rolling tide of cumulus rapids, dragging squally veils along beneath its dark velvet undertow, spelt ominous signs that Mystic Met's precipitous predictions were as on-song as the shrill storm warnings I heard emanating from every rustling promontory and bushy observation station I pulled up beside throughout a sporadic haul to Hove's landlocked lagoon. Doubled back via Portland Road, following 20 tame tempo minutes, cranking out just enough guesstimated wattage to power a dormouse's dynamo-driven central heating system, which, according to current capped rates imposed by the rodent community's national energy regulator, would have saved 20 hazelnuts per month, compared to a twig-fired boiler. Steep vein thrombosis. A condition, I'm told, can affect athletes addicted to acutely positive gradients, regardless of their altitude, making it potentially far more dangerous than the circulatory disorder experienced by aircraft passengers during long-haul flights, for which precautionary safety measures can be taken. Thankfully, this level-legged wander along Shoreham Beach's pebble-dashed boardwalk, regarding the feral verdancy that has weighed permanent anchor within its fertile shingle fields, whilst trying to weed out the windswept wilderness of life's collective subconscious, posed no such risks. 1 therapeutic hour well spent, and a few thousand steady strides in the name of good health. Sunday Swan Song. The most noteworthy event of this otherwise nondescript date with destiny, over which temperamental technology seems to have now seized indefinite command, occurred before I'd set one flat foot upon a platform pedal, when I decided to precede this housebound session of active role-playing by hammering out a few heavily simplified melodies on my Data Dungeon's counterweighted finger conditioning device, more commonly known to classically trained musicians as a piano, or in this specific instance, an 88-key MIDI control surface. The contraption in question is connected via a matrix to an unracked stack of outboard synthesizers that I have accrued and hoarded with greater zeal than a vampire guarding their vintage casket collection throughout over 3 decades as a self-employed studio engineer, during which I've had far more time to twiddle my thumbs than twist 1,000 knobs on an array of mixing desks that were used to record at least one flawless performance of Bach's First Prelude. The keyboard, a now discontinued Roland A88, can be powered either directly via a USB 2 Type A port or using Roland's bundled and branded DC adapter, which delivers up to 27 watts to thirstier appliances from its regulated 9-volt 3-amp output. Why this seemingly superfluous technical detail? Because Strava's statistically disposed cycloanalysts would never be satisfied unless I divulged that the referenced wattage also happened to be 88% lower than I averaged during a generous half-hour of sustainably strenuous slipstreaming around Watopia's bustling coastline.